and watch TV. And I heard somebody come home, big, heavy footprints walking through my kitchen, headed up the hallway to where my stairs were, and then into my brother's room. And so I kind of came downstairs because I wanted to see what the festival was like. And I saw that the light in his room was on and his door was closed. So I knew he had come home because then my mom is a stickler about not wasting electricity. And she makes me go around the house and turn off all the lights to keep the energy bill low. And my brother always leaves his lights on. So I went in his room and I shut the light off before bed. So I knocked on his door, and as I'm knocking on his door, it opens by itself, and there's nobody in there, which I didn't find unusual. My brothers have a habit of going to wake my mom up from a deep sleep to say goodnight. And so I figured they probably just went to my mom's room. So I went to my mom's room where my mom was watching TV, and she asked me, well, who came home? And I said, well, I thought somebody came to see you because Andy's light's on, but nobody's in the house. And she's like, oh, I heard, my brother wears cowboy boots. So she heard big cowboy boots walking through the kitchen, and she's like, well, he must have come home, grabbed something, and left. So I called his cell phone, and I heard him still at the festival, which is 45 minutes away. You can't come home, go into your room, grab something, and then get 45 minutes away back to a festival unless you have some kind of time machine I don't know about.
Or he's teleporting or something like that.
Exactly, the Stargate or something like that, just walking through and getting there. And so I asked him if my other brother was with him, and he said, yeah, John's here. And so then I kind of started to freak out that somebody had broke into the house because my mom had heard somebody in the kitchen. I had heard somebody in the kitchen. So we grabbed butcher knives, and I'm trying to look like my mom's on the couch, just kind of protecting herself with a big butcher knife in her hand. And I'm trying to look like this pit bull, that's ready to attack if someone jumps out at me. And
Miss Tuffy, right?
Yeah, Miss Tuffy, don't cross me because, I'm this big tough girl. And, so I'm walking around, I'm looking under beds, I'm looking in closets, trying to look as intimidating as possible. And I'm just not seeing it. The windows are locked. The doors are all still locked. Nothing looks like it's been tampered with. Just in case, I put a knife in the basement door so in case someone snuck downstairs, they can't get back up. And then I went into my brother's room, checked under the bed, checked in his closet, nothing. So I turned off his light. And he's got this old-fashioned light switch that up is on, down is off. There's nothing in between. It's a very heavy click. And then you can't just, push it halfway down and then it pops back up. That you just can't do that with this old-fashioned light. So I turned it off, and as I'm walking out, I hear a very loud click, and the light goes back on. And so I turn around, and I'm kind of like, well, that's a little weird. So I went and I turned it off again, and I held it down just to make sure it was all the way down. And as I'm walking out, I'm kind of looking over my shoulder, I actually see and hear the light switch go up by itself, and it clicks back on. Huh. So, of course, now I'm really getting kind of nervous about that. And my brother and my other brother rushed home because I'm on the phone with them, trying to figure out where they are. And that's when I hung up the phone. I said, oh, my God, somebody broke into our house. And I hung up. So they just came rushing back home just to see because, they're both police officers.
Wow. Okay.
And, yeah, they did a perimeter search. And it had rained the day before, so there was a lot of mud. And the only footprints in the mud were the ones that they were leaving as they were walking around the property. And it was just the oddest thing that ever happened. And I said, this has to be a rational explanation. There's, it's not paranormal because my brother tried to say, well, we were just at Gettysburg and we brought home some souvenirs. You never know. And I said, no, there's no way. And then all of a sudden things started to happen on a daily basis where I would hear somebody asking for me or calling my name, and I call out who's asking for me, and nobody would claim to have, said anything. And it reached a head when I was in my bedroom, sitting on my bed, talking to a friend on the phone, complaining that I couldn't find the batteries for my remote control to my television. And I'm not some caveman. I'm not going to get up and manually turn the television stations because that's what remote controls were invented for.
You're from the new era, right?
I'm from the new era. I'm from the lazy era. I want things to be done for me. I don't want to have to get up and physically do it. And I'm just complaining about it to my friend about, I know I just bought a whole bunch of batteries and I can't find a single one. As I'm speaking I'm on the phone for 20 minutes. Out of my closet, from way in the back against the wall in the top shelf, this wasn't something that was just teetering where it could have just fallen. It was way pressed against the back wall. It literally flew out of the closet, this big box, and it flew 8 feet until it hit my bed and then tipped out all over the floor.
Wow.
And I took a measuring tape because I wanted to see how far that thing flew, and it literally was 8 feet away from the closet. So, I mean, that thing had to be thrown to make 8 feet. And when it tipped over, every single battery I had ever bought was in the box. And that's when I kind of started to say, something is going really weird here. That this can't be simply explained away as natural means, because if that box were going to come out of the closet, it would have tipped out, and I tried about 100 different ways to get that box to fall in the closet, and it always just fell straight down. It never flew 8 feet.
What took you so long, Andrea? What took you so long to come up with that conclusion?
I was very skeptical. I had never had a paranormal experience before. I'm one of these people, like, if I don't experience it and I don't see it, I don't necessarily believe it. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I think what happens as we grow up, especially if you're religious, there is a level, like when you're a kid and you have an imaginary friend, people call it an imaginary friend, but you see it there and you talk to it and you believe it, you just accept that it's there because you don't realize that you're not supposed to be seeing something like this. And as you grow up and as you're raised, you learn that you can't accept this because this is evil, or you can't believe in this because that doesn't exist, this isn't possible, and you build this wall up of this isn't possible, everything has a logical explanation. And I had built that wall up for myself where I just didn't believe anything. And I just said, this can't be possible. Everything has a logical explanation. Even the first incident I could explain away. I mean, I tried, it was hard to explain away, but I was able to kind of explain it away. But then we started to get into different things where I started to not be able to explain it, like the box in the closet. But it all came finally to a boiling point a couple months later. Unfortunately, my father lost his battle with cancer.
Oh, sorry to hear
He
that.
had been dealing with it for 15 years, and it was, he finally, unfortunately, passed away. And it was a very hard time for us because my grandmother had passed away a few months earlier. And so it was a very, very tough few months for us. And about a month after my father passed, my mom and I decided to come into the 21st century, and we bought our very first landline machine that had a digital voicemail machine. We used to have one of those analogs with the little miniature tapes that you have to change every so often.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we finally we thought we were like the cool kids on the block now because we actually had digital, and we were so excited about it. And we had our very first message when we were coming home from shopping one day, and we couldn't wait. I mean, it was just like Christmas for us, getting ready to press that button when we saw the blinking light. And we were a little disappointed when we listened. It was all white noise. But that was back in the days when you could butt dial your phone, like put it in your back pocket and accidentally call someone. And you can hear some really funny conversations.
People still do that.
Yeah, people do still do that, but not as much, at least not as much for me. But we used to hear some funny conversations with my brothers because they always butt dialed us, and they were always talking to their friends, and we just have the biggest laugh just listening to them.
Just listening in.
Until they realized.
Hoping that they talked about you.
Exactly. So we were listening, and all of a sudden I heard something that just made my jaw drop. And my mom looked at me and she said, "I didn't just hear that, did I?" So we called my brother, who was at work. He worked for, when he was a police officer, he worked for the city where we lived. And he came rushing home on his lunch break to hear this weird message. And we didn't tell him what we heard. We just pressed play. And he listened. He's like, "Oh, my God, you're kidding me." So then we had my other brother come home, and my other brother listened, again, not knowing what any of us heard. And his jaw just went to the floor. He's like, "That's Dad." And we all finally said, "Yeah, that's Dad." It was my dad's voice saying, "I love you." And then there was another male voice that we couldn't recognize talking about a light. And then the voicemail cut off. And all paranormal activity in the house stopped at that moment. We never had any more weird voices, never had any more phantom boxes flying out of closets, no more footsteps in the house. It just seemed to stop.
Just stopped, yeah.
Yeah, and finally, my theory, when I finally decided